Hi, this is Ed Beer Jr., and this is my part 4, the continuation of my Trumpeting Sentinel. It's going to be including some mountains, backgrounds, and different characters. Well, as we begin here, you can see we're working with our Tortillan paper stump shading tool, and we're blending some of those areas. I'm going in with some blunt and fine-tipped or fine-pointed shadowing tools. These paper stumps are fabulous. They really can blend and create those soft subtleties that you need. You can see it's just happening right now, giving that shadow on the left side. The right side of the paper, of course, is our light source coming in from the right, casting shadows on the left. Going in and darkening some of the left side of each of those feathers is going to be key, creating some more depth. Don't be afraid to push the values. The values from dark to light, they really need to be there so that your picture doesn't look shallow. Now we're going to work on background, architecture, and figures. These are the background images. Well, we're starting off with the mountainside. Now the mountain terrain in the background, we're making sure we have those nice dark shadows on the left side of each of those crevices and cracks. I'm going to go in, we're probably working right now with an HB pencil, and the HB is going to be key because it's not too dark, the graphite doesn't come off too easy. We are working with a 300 series medium tooth Strathmore paper. We want to make sure we have enough graphite on the paper though so that we can use our Tortillan blending tool in a few minutes just to bring those midtones out. But for now, we're working on putting in the darks. Some of the detailing. Now we're going in with that paper stump to shadow, trying to avoid some of the areas that were indicated for the buildings in the architecture. Now this is the lower left-hand side of the page. I like to work from top to bottom, back to front, left to right. And now we're going in with some of the architecture, redefining the lines for the buildings as well as throwing in some of those shadows, each on the left side, being very consistent about that. A lot of times I'll see portfolios and my students constantly reminding them, make sure you keep your light source consistent. And especially with background and atmospheric images, you want to make sure that the light sources carry over the same effects to the feature character that's in the foreground. Now as I'm shadowing in, I'm also still redefining the contour lines that we put in the initial contour line drawing. We weren't being obviously too concerned in the very beginning about all those little details. We knew that we would go in and put those details in later on using the shadows to create lines, to create those individual contour lines. Not worry too much about the super fine details, but I am redefining, like right now I'm redefining the roof and the shingle work that's going on here because I've got the opportunity to do it. I'm going to be putting in those darks to make sure that happens. And now we're working up into the background. Some of the rest of the soldiers that are coming following, that are being called by this trumpeter. Now we work on the crystals to which the talons of this martial eagle are perched. One thing about crystals is different than light absorbing objects. This is a light refracting or reflecting object. And because of that, light will because of the translucency of the objects, crystals, the light will come through and the shadows will be bounced around in all the different angular cuts of the crystals. So if you study crystals, you tend to notice that the shadows will actually flow through and be picked up on the opposite side of where the object that may be initially casting the shadow is. Just give yourself some time to practice observing. Most importantly is observation. And you'll notice that as you do crystals, even though wherever the light is the strongest will be a little brighter, you tend to see that shadows and light will really pick up on the opposite side, and in some cases the very dark side. And that's what we call reflective light. Going in and smudging it. Going back to the background, we're putting in some of the details of the rest of his armed forces coming in. And of course, These are a little closer, so we're going to see a little more detail, a little more of the feathered look. And don't be afraid to detail these things up, because even though they're background characters, and generally background characters will be somewhat faded off or backed off, we call it depth of field when you're photographing. We want to lighten up these images later on after we blended and shadow them. We go in with a kneaded eraser and we just kind of lightly tap them, and it basically lightens the overall image, but this way we don't sacrifice any detail. Now I am using an HB pencil. I could have used a 2H and basically done what I needed to do as far as shadowing it and detailing it and keeping it that the light or the backed off value that I wanted in the end, but I find it much easier if you go in with a pencil that will give you those values from dark to light that you need, and then just go in after the fact and lighten everything up. Just going in right now and redefining the contour line of the chest of the foreground main character. The particular eagle that I'm working on right now, the wings are much closer, so we can take some time to actually redefine some of the individual feathers on that. Now there's a couple of different schools of thought, whether it be drawing or painting. A lot of people like to really, really blur out and make the background images when they paint very brushy and very, very out of focus. And sure, that adds a certain amount of dynamic to the piece. I find that with drawing, as with painting, you could still have the same crisp detail, in effect the capability of that which a camera could do, where you'd have focusing beyond just your first and second plane of perspective. But yet you could at the same time simply back off the values, the dark to light values, therefore creating an effect of distance just by it being faded slightly, but yet not sacrificing any detail and crisp contour line work. It is a matter of preference. It's just something that I choose to do in my work. I try to be as consistent as possible with making sure that my backgrounds are just as detailed as my foregrounds. They're simply just backed off as far as the values are concerned. And now we're working on the main tower, in which the martial eagle and the trumpeting knight is perched upon. And these crystals, just like the ones we did which were right under the talons, will have the same kind of effect, that same graphic line, reflective light that's going on. Now I'm working with a 2B pencil on this particular one because it's a little larger, there's a little more areas to cover, and I want to get the darknesses, the depth of the dark values in the crystals. When I go back in later on with the shading stumps or the tortillas, I'll be able to blend any of the mid-tones, and there aren't too many in crystals. Now I'm going down to work on the stone tower, and again keeping in mind that the light is coming from the right-hand side and casting its light to the left. So everything that is to the right, crevice-wise, will be shadowed. Light will be picked up on the left side of each of those crevices. This is going to be kind of a stone granite feel to it, so I'm going to I've thrown some cracks in there in the contour line work, and I'm going to kind of redefine that with creating an overall mid-tone of shadow. As I'm starting to do right now. And now by doing that in the body of the stonework and then redefining those outer contour lines, I give the feeling of the highlights, they pull out more because of that. Once again, going in there and redefining. All right, well, thank you very much. This has been the part 4. We're going now to part 5, which is the multi-character scene drawing demonstration conclusion of the Trumpeting Sentinel. Look forward to seeing you there.